about the fantastic Indonesia library collection that we have here at Monash and run over the format for today's seminar. Thanks, Reni.
Thank you, Sharon. Welcome everybody to our first online Miss Monash Indonesian seminar series. I'm so thrilled to be able to see all the familiar faces, all our audience. We miss you all. And thank you for coming and supporting this seminar over the years. There is a lot of changes that happened recently. We farewelled Professor Ariel Herianto as the first director of Monash Hafid Indonesian Engagement Center. Pa Ariel has outstanding achievements in the establishment of the center itself, but also has continued the legacy of Professor Hafid to deepen our contemporary and historical understanding of Indonesia. And now we welcome Sharon Davis as the Associate Professor of Indonesian Studies at Monash University and Director of the Monash Hafid Indonesian Engagement Center. Sharon is meant to be in Melbourne a few months ago, but she's still in New Zealand now because of COVID-19. But I'm so thrilled that she joined us today. You might recall in the past, we would have chatted, said hello to each other while we're having some Indonesian snacks and sweets. Unfortunately, now we just have to bring our own tea and coffee. But nevertheless, we are here as community and we still going strong. And let's make the most out of this station today. Also, as a subject librarian for Indonesian Studies, it's important to acknowledge Monash University Library ongoing commitment to this seminar. And we thank you to all the audience who have been coming. Ibu Anita Dewi, when she was in my role, started this seminar as Bukan Rumpi Tapi Diskusi. And now we are still going despite all the changes. So before we start our seminar today, as in the past, I would like to show you some of the collections that might be interest of you. Normally, I would have a little displays of books related to the seminar topic, but now I'm going to share my screen to show you some of the collection that might be relevant and interest of you. Let me stop share that one. Okay, so the first thing I would like to share is when we are allowed to come to the library, you can search our library collection through the catalog. So this is our catalog. And I'm happy to announce that we do have some of our interns book here, our speakers today. So if you just search Intan Paramadita's name, you'll be able to see some of the books that we have in our Indonesian collection. Another thing that I would like to also show you today is our Indonesian Studies Library Guide. So for those of you, even though you are not studying or working at Monash, you can still see this Indonesian Studies Library Guide. If you just Google Indonesian Studies Library Guide, Monash University, you will be able to see the guide that we have created to provide information about what we have in our collection. Because again, we can't physically come to the library, or for those of you who are joining from overseas, you can't actually come and see our library collection. Have a look at databases and journals on this library guide. One thing that I can highlight to you all is a database called Neliti. So I'm going to share the website. So Neliti is a free database it's studied by two researchers in Jakarta. And perhaps some of you who are based in Indonesia know about this database, but it aims to connect academics in Indonesia by aggregating research from different universities in Indonesia. So it's all free. You can have a look at the, you can try and search and find mostly available full text online. So I'll show you quickly, for example, because we are talking about literature today. I'm just searching for articles and typing Indonesian literature. And as you can see here, I've got about 630 results, and it says here what type of resources they are. So journal articles, thesis and dissertations, all the titles are there, and you can click on and get the full text free. So that's one, another thing that I would like to show. Last one is Monash collection online. Again, because we can't come to the library, this is a fantastic resource. So all our digitized collection is available through Monash collection online. You can just Google Monash collection online. You can have a look at the database. There are some excellent Indonesian digitized collections. So if you click on browse and click on browse collection, you'll see, for example, Star Weekly and Sinpo are there. So those are the main, so those are the Chinese Indonesian newspapers that we have digitized. And we have a almost complete issues of those newspapers. There's a lot of other things. So not just Indonesian collection, but other special collection that we have at Monash Library. And they're all free for you to look at. I think that's probably all that I want to share today. Thank you so much for coming, and I'm handing it over back to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Bu Reni. So it gives me great pleasure today to introduce our two speakers. First, we are joined by Dr. Intan Paramadita, who holds a PhD from the US and currently lectures at Macquarie University in Sydney, and somehow still finds time to write incredible award-winning novels. Second, we are joined by Dr. Stephen Epstein, who is based where I am now, here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and who took on the brave task of not just translating a novel, but a choose-your-own adventure story. So welcome to you both.
Selamat siang, nice to be here.
Intan, if I could turn to you first, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be in Australia? Oh, you're muted, either our end or your end.
He's not.
I don't think she can unmute. So.
You're not on mute. We can hear you. Just
Okay. Yeah, that's
all
good.
Right. I guess now I'm on mute. Okay. So yeah. So I guess I'd like to say hello, everyone. And I'd like to thank Sharon and the Monash Indonesian seminar series for inviting me. And thank you everyone for being here. I see many friends' names, very excited. I know it's, the time is very Australia, New Zealand centered, and it's quite early in Indonesia and quite late in the US, but thank you very much for being here. So I've been in Australia for about 4 years, and before that, I was in the US for about a decade. I did my master's and PhD, and I worked there. And then I came here in 2016 for the position at Macquarie University. So I think it's like, it's been a blessing in disguise. Well, not a disguise, it's been a blessing because it's really close to Indonesia. Not really, but it's close. And I've been doing more work with the arts community, with women activists in Indonesia, more work since I moved to Australia. Yeah, so that's all about me.
Yeah, great, lovely, lovely. And kia ora to Stephen. Do you want to just
Kia ora.
introduce yourself a little bit?
Yes, so my name's Stephen Epstein, and I teach at Victoria University. I'm the director of the Asian Languages and Cultures program. As you can tell from my accent, I was born in North America, but I've been here for over 25 years now in Wellington. And I started out my career in classics. That's where my PhD is in, Greek and Latin literature. But for over about a quarter of a century, I've been primarily working in Asian studies and with Korea in particular, but also have a real interest in Indonesia.
Yeah, fabulous. Well, thank you both. Well, here I have in my hot little hands a copy of what we're talking about today. So, Intan, could you tell us, please, a little bit about what The Wandering is about?
Yeah, sure. Can we show the slide, please? Okay, so you have the covers of the Indonesian edition and the English one. So yeah, The Wandering is a novel that reflects on the idea of travel, mobility, and displacement in our globalized world. This was published in Indonesia in 2017 by Gramedia with my editor Mirna Yulistianti. It was translated into English by Stephen and published this year by Harville Secker, Penguin Random House in the UK. Unfortunately, my editor Ellie still can't be here due to the time zone in the UK. So I think I'd like to talk a little bit about the title and a little bit about the structure of the novel. So the original title in Indonesian language is Gentayangan, and well, that means the wandering, but I think the English language cannot capture the association between Gentayangan and ghosts in Indonesian language. So Gentayangan means wandering, but we use it to talk about the condition of being in two worlds, not in the world of the living, but these ghosts have not crossed over to the world of the dead. They haven't found their resting place. And it's a metaphor about metaphor of in-betweenness that I use to talk about the subjects who travel in the novel. Can we show the next slide? Next, yeah. Oh, before this one, I guess. Yeah. So maybe a little bit about the structure. It was inspired by the Choose Your Own Adventure game books or children's stories that I read when I was a child. So here the reader can choose their own stories. And it uses, the novel uses the second person point of view. So you, as the reader, you are the traveler, you meet other travelers, you create your stories. But unlike in Choose Your Own Adventure books, where the character you is quite empty, I mean, it can be anyone. Here, you is quite specific. So you, the reader, you are put in the position of a protagonist, and she is a third world woman who doesn't have the privilege to travel, and therefore she makes a pact with the devil. And the devil gives her a pair of red shoes so that she can wander, and thus the red shoes. Next, please. Yeah, so this is, so if you've been wondering about all these images of the red shoes, this is just a small project that I've been doing for a decade. It's like a companion to the novel. So this project is called the Red Shoe, a Red Shoe Odyssey. And I've been doing this since 2010. Well, basically it's like a documentation of the traces of the red shoes. Next. Thank you. Yeah, if you're curious about the images of the red shoes, you can go to thewandering.intanparamadita.com. And what, oh yeah, I guess going back to the novel, because it's the devil's shoes, obviously the shoes are cursed. So you can wander, but you will never find a home, or your home will never be the same. Even though you are transported to different places in a magical way, you still experience all these things that ordinary people experience. So borders are very real. If you have no safety net, no financial or social capital in the new place, you are doomed. Yeah, and of course your gender, class, skin color play a big role in shaping your experience as a traveler. Yeah, so that's a little bit about the novel.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it resonates on so many different levels, and perhaps most significantly right now, I'm reading this book at a time when I can't travel. And so it's such a joy to be able to think, oh, do I want to go down this path that might go to South America, or perhaps rather I'd go to Berlin. So it's a pretty incredible time to be reading this book. Just before we get into the process of translation, how do you go about writing a book? I know we've got lots of students here who are future novelists, and also translation studies students. What is your kind of approach to just writing a novel? Do you sit and set yourself word limits per day or hours per day?
I guess in good days, yeah. I mean, I set up 2 hours per day, 200, 300 words. So in total, in 5 days, I can have 1,000 words, but those are the good days. In general, my days are not good with university admins and teaching and marking. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd like to also just ask a little bit about how other Indonesian literature might help inform this. I kind of got a sense of Eka Kurniawati's work, you know, with the ghosts and kind of things through there. Does the other work of Indonesian novelists play a role in how you tell your story?
Yeah, sure. I guess in terms of I came from a generation where we really wanted to do something different. So you probably see some other writers incorporate horror. I love horror a lot, and for instance, Eka Kurniawan deals with horror too. We worked together, Eka Kurniawan, Ugoran Prasad, and myself. We co-authored an anthology called Kumpulan Budak Setan, or The Devil Slaves Club. It's an homage to Indonesian horror writer Abdullah Harahap, which was at that time quite marginal in Indonesian literature. But I think we wanted to, as part of the same generation emerging in mid-2000, we wanted to do something different. We didn't want to write like, oh, those great authors before us. We didn't want to write like Kunto Wijoyo or Sapardi Djoko Damono or Gunawan Muhammad or even Ayu Tami, who at that time were quite new. So we embraced horror, cinema, 90s rock music, B-movie aesthetics, all things kitsch. Although Eka's way of approaching horror is quite different, more influenced by magical realism, Latin American style, and I am more influenced by Gothic fiction, American and British Gothic fiction. And I think my favorite author from Indonesia is Ibu Tuti Herati. She's the godmother of feminist literature, and I always champion her work. I think I'm really influenced by her feminist ideas. In terms of style, the older I got, the more I became influenced by Budi Dharma. His stories are really weird, like mine, I guess. His characters are bizarre and very, I would say, perverse, but they are still grounded in realism. I can talk more about Budi Dharma later, but yeah.
Yeah, lovely, lovely. Thank you. Well, I'd love to talk a little bit about the translation and Intan, did you always plan for it to be, or hoping for it to be translated? And then how does Stephen fit into the picture?
No, not really. I guess when I wrote it, I thought about okay, it was written primarily for Indonesian audience, but I wrote this during my time abroad between 2008 to 2017. So 9 years I was moving through different cities and countries. So I thought about that about the reader, not just Indonesian reader, but also well, other readers. I didn't think about the novel being translated, but I thought, you know, maybe someday when I die, that someone would translate this, and this will be read by, I don't know, people from different culture. And I want this to be a kind of a way of talking back to Western literature, which also influenced my work. I want this to be the story of a third world woman. This should be the story where you reflect on travel and the legacy of colonialism that affects your traveling experience. So yeah, that kind of writing back is always there, even though when I was writing it, I didn't know that it would be translated. I guess in terms of, I guess, Stephen, do you want to add to this? But we were working on Apple and Knife at that time, and I was still working on the novel. So I guess to some extent, I knew that this was going to be translated sometime in 2017. Yeah, but that was towards the end of finishing the novel.
Well, I'm very glad that we didn't have to wait till your passing to get it translated. So Stephen, translating just a normal, you know, a normal novel that follows from page to page is hard enough. How was it translating a choose your own adventure where the story skips around?
To be honest, I'm not sure that the choose your own adventure aspect really affected me that much, other than, well, initially I had to make a decision, how do I want to do this? And I made the decision, and I think it was the right one, is to just go through page by page. And in fact, I've come to think that that's probably the most interesting, one of the ways to read the novel, because you're keeping everything in your head simultaneously. I would get a little concerned that maybe I would lose something that was happening. But being in touch with Intan throughout the process, that also helped a bit. In the revisions, I then, only after I had gone through a couple of times, did I make sure I followed each and every thread to make sure that they hung together cohesively, and that there weren't too many jarring, variations in tone in a given thread or anything along those lines. But
I know we've got some slides there. I know we have a lot of translation studies students and a lot of us who have to do translation from time to time and struggle with that. Maybe we can bring those slides up, Stephen, and you can talk us through a little bit of...
well, yeah, okay. We can start with this slide because you were, I think, thinking about what are some of the difficult problems in the translation of the novel. And really, for me, one of the first things was just, how do I want to translate this devil figure, Iblis, who is then given the nickname Iblis Kekasih. And early on, I also asking Intan about it, that I suppose my gut feeling, because I wanted to stick with devil, and then Devil Dearest from Mommy Dearest sort of came to me. But Intan had told me she thought of the Samuel Coleridge poem, Kubla Khan, and this line on the upper right for Demon Lover. So I wanted to respect her wishes there. So we're going to go with Demon Lover, but it still created some problems, also trying to think about whether he was the devil, a demon. And so that was an issue. And when he's introduced, you have this short passage on the upper left, for those of you who can read the Indonesian there, and you'll see a fairly literal translation, and I'm leaving Iblis and Iblis Kekasih. Now, for me, one of the things with the Demon Lover triggered was Dream Lover. from Bobby Darin. And as it happens, this passage sounds a little bit like the opening to Dream Lover, you know, every night I hope and pray. And it's like, from that night on, you wait. And I thought, well, let's bring in this sort of allusion. And the novel is very, very full of literary and film allusions as well. And so I went back to Intan. And one of the great things about having a close collaboration is this is a, let's call it a, I don't know, a bold strategy, but it's something that I'm not sure I would do if I weren't able to discuss it with the author, because it's introducing something, but being able to go back and forth between us and getting the okay, and let's like kind of run with it. And throughout the novel, because the original has a lot of song lyrics, that I played a lot with that throughout the text. And then here, just again for the English reader, this, you begin to call him Iblis Kakasi, you know, how am I going to do that? And I thought to just, and it also gave an opportunity to introduce some humor. And so what pet name shall you bestow upon him? And I thought, so Devil Dearest, Beelzebaby, just some kind of humorous side. And again, that was a little humorous reference to an album called Beelzebubble by the Dead Milkmen, but then you settle on Dream Lover. So this is, all of these things are kind of coming together. So there's a dense elusiveness. Intan, in your recent interview with Malaysia, the Malaysian radio, I think you said something about a lot of what's going on. There's a certain nerdiness. And I feel like I was introducing a certain music nerd aspect to some of what's going on again, but it relies on being able to go back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I guess that many people would assume, that translation is a singular activity done by one person who's just kind of looking at a script and translating it. But there was an incredible amount of teamwork between both of you, and I imagine also other people.
Yeah, and that, I would say that goes back to our work with Apple and Knife. And, well, even before that, in the first story, when a segment made it into Asymptote, that Tiffany Tsao gave some editing suggestions that were just terrific. I mean, she's a great editor and a translator and novelist in her own right. And then our editor for Apple and Knife is Elizabeth Breyer, who is herself a translator and a great novelist in her own right. And she just won the, is it the Norma K. Hemming, what's the award? She just won a literary award yesterday. So we've been very, very lucky to be working with excellent people and who are keen to read the work, who offer suggestions, and I'm very happy to take a good suggestion. And I think in the way also that what Intan and I had already established is a willingness to go back and forth on both sides. And so hearing from others, we're just trying to produce the best text we possibly can in English. So, yeah.
And how does that decision making go? I guess part of it is discussion, because you can both speak, you know, Indonesian and English, which helps. But even simple things like, there was a passage, I'm not sure if it's on this slide or the next one, but you know, the original says the arms and legs were tied to the bed, but the translation becomes the limbs. So even those micro things, how do you make a decision about that?
Intan, do you want to say anything that's? No. Well, some of those, that arms and legs as opposed to limbs, I think what Intan saw the drafts. So if she had said, oh, actually it's important for it to be arms and legs rather than limbs, I would listen and think, okay, sure, if there's a good reason for it. But that's the sort of thing that I think a literary translator naturally does, goes from arms and legs and just thinking it feels more natural, more literary in English. And I would say Intan is the author of the text, the original text. And I would say that I pretty much would always defer to her, unless I'm not sure it really happened, if there were something that I thought it's an issue about the feeling in English, for example. If I were dealing, sometimes with other authors, it's happened in some of my Korean translations that an author has asked for something, but I say, well, that doesn't really feel right in English, and that's a different issue, and that there the translator might have more say, but I don't think that really came up as such with us.
Yeah, I mean, if I can add a little bit about that passage where you're not sure if he's some random shaitan or the great Iblis himself. That whole passage that wasn't there in the Indonesian edition. So that's like part of it was me, part of it was Stephen, and we talked about it together, and I really like that because it really represents. Actually, it's my own confusion. In my imagination, I do sometimes it's the devil. Because I like the idea of bargaining with the devil, but I also like to see this figure as some lowly demon. And I really insist on this phrase, demon lover. So we actually, it has never been, it has not been resolved, right? So it remains a bit blurry whether this is the devil or the demon, but I like how that kind of confusion is reflected in this passage, new passage in the English translation.
Yeah, lovely. And I can see lots of questions, so do post questions into the chat box. We'll get to them very soon.